We could go into a debate about the Gospels and how they contradict.
Okay, so let's play that out then. Let's say they are written 1 year after Jesus. None of them contradict in any way whatsoever, and we know the exact authors who they were. Do you now believe Jesus rose from the dead?
No.
Right, so again, if we could prove that and you still would not believe, then why do you bring up these issues of the Bible? You're arguing points that even if I was correct wouldn't change your viewpoint. The issue isn't in the evidence, the issue is in your own epistemology. It's your own dogma, because it doesn't matter the evidence I bring. You will never be... hello, how are you? And just real quick, how old are you?
I'm doing well. I'm 25.
What's up, bro?
I just wanted to come at this from an angle. I'm not going to try to convince you to leave Christianity, because I don't think that will really work. I can't convince you to leave something, but I would just come at it like, you say you have the truth. I don't know about the truth. So I'd ask you, why do you believe your Christian God is the God? And how can you prove that to me?
Yeah, so here's the thing. I put this title up there for I used my wrong hand. I put the title up there for wait, you're on this one. Oh my God. For a reason, specifically because of what you said. And maybe I'm calling you out a little bit, but it's not like a personal thing, is because no one can actually give me a grounding or a philosophical reason or an evidential reason why something like atheism or agnosticism is the best choice to make. Instead, it's always like, hey, Christianity, you prove it, you prove it, you prove it. So they're always kind of like throwing the burden of proof on Christians rather than accepting the burden of proof themselves and just kind of living in this standard of like, I can believe what I want without actually giving a grounding for it in the first place.
Yeah, but I feel like when you're making the claim, then you have the burden of proof.
So, okay, so here's my claim. I lack the belief that God does not exist.
Okay. I think two separate arguments could be there. I don't think you can't prove the non-existence of something,
Sure you
just
can.
like you can't prove the tooth fairy doesn't exist.
Sure you can.
So no one can really prove God doesn't exist, but we can break down the Bible, and there's dozens and dozens of arguments as why the Bible, the Christian God, there's no proof that is real.
Okay, so
there's no reason to believe that the Bible tells you of the true God.
So you can absolutely prove a negative. What you do is you look at probabilities and you say, what's the probability of this thing existing? For example, it'd be a really great way to disprove Christianity. All you'd have to do is bring forth the body of Christ, or show that there's a higher probability that he did not resurrect from the dead. If you did that, it would disprove Christianity. So you could disprove the Christian God by doing that. So there are methods of doing that in the first place. So just saying, I can't do that, it's just silly, because we do that all the time with things. We show that things are not likely, and we move forward.
Okay. Yeah, but I think when it comes down to probability and God, I mean, you can use mathematics and probability with everything. Mm-hmm. But I think it's kind of lost on this argument, because it's kind of the existential argument that humans have struggled with forever. We can't just hop into probabilities and understand, okay, it looks like math is telling us it's probable that there is a God or there isn't. I think it's more complicated than that. And if you are claiming that your book is the true God, I think you have to have reasons and evidence. You have to be able to prove that, because anybody from an outside perspective that doesn't know anything about Christianity, a Muslim raised in Iraq, their perception, they're never going to understand what you seem to understand and
yeah, sure, but and
accept as just objective truth.
So I agree with you that the person making the claim has the burden of proof, which is why my title is "Convince Me to Leave Christianity." Because
it's a tricky title.
I want some other people to actually accept the burden of proof for once and show me there's actually a grounding for why they believe what they believe. So, are you an atheist?
I'd say I'm agnostic atheist. I'd say because belief isn't a choice, and I haven't seen anything that constitutes enough to convince me or to believe that there is a God. So, in the face of that, I just believe there isn't. But I believe there very well could be.
Okay, so I could just give that same argument. I haven't been given enough evidence to believe that there isn't a God, so I just believe there is one.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
And I think that we could go down a rabbit hole, and because then we would dive into the Bible, and because that's where you go the step further. Like, I say, I don't know that if there is like a God and a deity at all. And then you're kind of dropping it down one and saying, well, I feel that same way about Christianity. So then we could probably go and talk about it for hours about why this verse and they don't line up. And then the Bible, because of these reasons, there are inconsistencies and contradictions, and it can't be completely used as the truth, and then you're just picking parts of it that you decide are the truth. I mean, we could go on for a long time.
So I think the historic reportage model of the scripture is actually incredibly strong. One of the strongest things we actually have in history. I actually think the only reason to deny it is because of your grounding of like, I don't believe God exists. So if you have like this, it's called the appeal to analogy, right? It's done in history. So basically, if you have this concept that miracles do not happen, well, no matter what historical method that I bring to you and show you, no matter how much evidence I show you, you'll never be convinced of that. That's why I want to shift this burden of proof a little bit, because if everybody gets away with, I don't have to prove what I believe, and you're just constantly throwing the burden of proof on other people, it's an unfair dichotomy. I think that atheism, or even if you're agnostic atheist, I think you have a burden of proof. You have to say, hey, naturalism is the most likely hypothesis, considering all things.
Yeah, but the example of miracles, it's like atheists. The thing about us is we're not claiming to know anything really. It's when you dive into every single religion, it's like from the beginning they've known everything, and from the beginning they've been trying to convince and
do miracles
tell everybody that they
happen?
have it right.
Do miracles happen?
I haven't debated or thought about the definition of miracles and what exactly they are. So I don't know if our definitions line up off the top of my head. Do miraculous things happen? Do things we can't explain happen to people, especially
I'll just give
biologically?
I'll just give you the definition of what I mean by miracle.
Okay.
Something that transcends the natural law.
The natural law. Okay. I would just say, my definition would be more, you just read the definition. Okay. I can agree with that. I'll go forward with that. Do miracles happen? Hard to answer by that definition. I don't really like that definition of miracles. My definition is, to me, it's things that happening unexplainably by what we understand to be true. Because I don't think we're ever in a position to claim that if there's something, a phenomena that we completely cannot understand, then there's something going on that we don't know.
Right. So that's why I gave my definition, because your definition just takes miracles and pushes them into the natural law, right? It's the science of the gaps fallacy, because basically you're saying this thing happened. I don't know why it happened, but it must be something natural. So we will eventually discover what was the natural means to cause that thing to happen.
Yeah. Okay. I can agree with that. I haven't read into the science of the gaps at all. So if this might be an area where I'm not read up too much.
It's just a tongue-in-cheek response to God of the gaps. It's not like an actual
because I've heard that
concept.
Before, but understand. I don't know. I think from my worldview, that just seems like a much easier unknown to lean into, as opposed to there's a God and that's why miracles happen.
Right. So that's what I'm saying is atheists, they kind of have this like level of skepticism that becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, because no matter what data is presented, no matter what evidence is brought forth, it's always going to be miracles don't happen. Eventually we're going to discover the natural means by which that happened. And so, so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. There'll never be enough data or evidence that will convince an atheist outside of God revealing themselves to them. And even in that case, a lot of people, I've talked to people who said they still wouldn't believe. They just say it was like some psychotic episode they went through.
Yeah, and I would agree that the unknown of miracles and what that even means, and in both of these definitions, that could be evidence for a God. Yes, but miracles happen in most, if not all, the religions, and there's accounts of them, and there's no really proof to tell what is a real miracle to the next.
Okay, but
so you can't tie miracles to the Christian God.
Right, so that's a really weird thing to do, though, to say miracles happen in other religions, so therefore all miracles are false. You're saying there's more evidence for miracles and then denying it. No,
I'm saying miracles can't then be tied to the Christian God. Miracles are something that may or may not happen, whether we know. If it is something happening outside the natural law, then okay, it's a miracle we can't understand that. If it is what I was talking about, we just don't have the means to understand it yet. Either way, they're both happening. Every religion thinks that their God is doing the miracle.
Right, but I'm not even tying it to the Christian God. I'm just talking about the fact that miracles can or cannot happen. That was a question I asked you. My question wasn't, do miracles happen and is Christian God responsible for it? My question for you is, do you believe miracles can happen? right? So saying there's more evidence
Yeah.
of miracles isn't helping your case.
No, I guess I'm looking to see where this goes. Like, what's I would say sure I believe in miracles.
Okay, so then if you believe in miracles and you believe the breaking of the natural order, which means that you're not locked into naturalism. So then if we
Okay, yeah, I forgot. I believe my definition of miracles. So the science of the gaps or whatever you called it earlier. I don't believe spiritual supernatural miracles happen.
Yeah, so you believe there's unknown natural explanations for things that we don't understand. That's just basic science 101.
I would say I lean towards that, but like I said before, we can't prove which one of us is right. So, but then I think where this ties into Christianity. Like, I thought we were going to go somewhere, and then
so I think we can prove it, but I think the issue isn't in the evidence. The issue is in epistemology and people's priors. So the issue isn't in the evidence. The issue is in what people's internal dogmas are. That's okay. What I want to focus on, is because if your epistemology is off the bat, miracles do not happen and will never happen. It does not matter how much evidence I bring to you. It does not matter what we go through in the Bible. It doesn't matter anything I show you. At the end of the day, you're going to be like, well, I can't believe it because miracles don't happen.
Okay. I understand that. I don't think where I come from my atheist perspective, like, miracles have never been like a thing for me to determine where I ended up. And I don't think I would have a skeptical lens upon it reading through the Bible if there was other things along with it. Like, if it was hitting all the home runs for me and then it mentioned miracles, it wouldn't put me off. I wouldn't be like, oh, well,
okay,
this can't be true.
So let me ask you a question. Did Jesus exist?
It looks like he did. I would say probably.
Okay. Did his apostles exist?
Yeah.
Okay. Was he executed under Pontius Pilate?
That's what historical record tells us.
Okay. Did he go and preach in Galilee and Judea?
I believe so. I'm trying to remember which speeches those were.
Okay. Why do you believe those things are true?
Because our historical writings and stuff tell us, not just the Bible.
Well, no, like the 12 apostles and preaching in Judea and Galilee are strictly in the Bible. But most historians, as far as I can tell, no historian denies that Jesus did these things.
Yeah, I don't deny he did those things. Okay. Jesus could have been and done exactly everything he did.
Okay.
Exactly as they say, went everywhere, gave every speech. I don't have a problem with that.
So that's what I'm saying, is that we look at the scripture and we say, yes, Jesus did these things. Yes, Jesus preached to these people. Yes, Jesus had 12 apostles. Yes, John the Baptist existed. Yes, John the Baptist was executed. All these things are true. Everything in the scripture is lining up with things that are said by Tacitus, Josephus, Pliny the Younger. They're all in a line. There's few differences based off their individual interpretations, but they're getting the historical parts correct. So we say, yes, these things are true, but then we get to the part where it says, well, Jesus rose from the dead, and we go, that didn't happen. Why?
Because it's supernatural and there's no reason to believe it.
Right. So the issue isn't the evidence. The issue is your priors.
Well, no, that's not. There's no evidence that there's a lot of issues with the Gospels, and
I'm not denying
the Gospels weren't written. They weren't written. So the life of Jesus and him living and carrying out everything and dying that way, it could have gone exactly that way. But then the New Testament is written over 100 years later.
No, that's not true.
It's written by clearly by
I got to stop you there. No
scholars.
No scholar says it's 100 years later. Not one.
What is it, like 70 to 90 years later?
No, it's not 70 to 90 years later. So the earliest would be plus 40 because Jesus.
That's not true.
Yes, Jesus.
That's not true. I'm pretty sure it's.
How many? Do you want to make a wait? Do you want to make a bet? Do you want to make a bet?
Make a bet?
Yeah. Do you want to put a wager on that?
I don't know you at all. I have no confidence I'd get any money. I don't see what would be beneficial for me.
I'll send the money to somebody in the chat, and you send the money to somebody in the chat, and then they can send it.
Yes, I'll bet plus 40 years. I'll bet over 40 years. I'm pretty sure it's like closer to 70 to 110. Okay. It was passed down orally.
All right. So do you have Google
up until then?
Right now?
And then I mean, it's very plausible. It was.
Do you have Google? Hold on. Don't go to it yet. I'm going to tell you what to Google. All right. So go to Google. Google, when did Jesus die? And then after that, go Google, when was the Gospel of Mark written? I also have it up on the screen.
I mean, did
Jesus died? What does it say?
Well, so you found the version that you like, where you do the little math to make it as small as possible. But
hold on, just look at the screen, bro. It's right up there. You can even see what I Googled.
I mean, there's so much shit on my screen. 30 to 33 AD.
Right. Okay. And then it says, when was the Gospel of Mark written?
70 CE.
So how many years difference is that?
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're doing. I see where you're getting at. So it's in between there. So that's why 40 is the closest they're giving it, and then it's up to 70. Still,
no,
that's not written.
How's that up
like
to 70?
We're arguing.
How are you coming to conclusion that 70?
Because
if Jesus died around 30 AD and the Gospel was written 70 AD, that's 40 years. How are you getting 70? And we're not even talking about the epistles of Paul, which are all written within like 10 to 20 years.
I'm sorry?
So like this is the earliest Gospel. It's written plus 40. And that's the earliest dating. There's really good arguments that it's written earlier than 70 CE or AD, depending on how you want to use your math. And hold on. Let me land my plane. And then even when we're looking at like the epistles of Paul, these are written like 10 to 20 to 30 years after, depending on the epistle. So these aren't, like, people say it's hundreds of years. I don't know how they come to those conclusions.
Yeah, I think I overshot it with over 100 years. But either way, it's a long time after he died. Why aren't they writing this stuff down right away?
They did write it down.
I know they went into hiding, whatever, but
they did. The 1 Corinthians 15:3 is dated to like.
You would think the resurrection of their Savior walking around for 40 days and then going up into heaven.
Are you listening to what I'm saying? I feel like you're just kind of talking over me at this point. So they did write it down right away. Right. This is like why we have like 1 Corinthians 15:3, depending on the scholar you ask, is cited to 1 year or 10 years. Again, depending on the scholar, most date it 125. There are some that date it past that. That's when that was written, and that records the death and resurrection. But even if we don't look at that, a lot of scholars hold to the fact that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John could have been using the sources called either M, L, or Q. Q is the primary version of that source, which would have been an earlier dating. But we don't have Q, so we don't know when it was written. Also, last point, this is not a long period of time for writing. Like when we're looking at antiquity, there are writings that we find from people that we accept in history that span like 400, 500, 100 years. Like it's not an unknown thing. To have a source that's that close is actually very unlikely when we're looking at antiquity.
Yeah. All right. I lost my train of thought. Oh, yes, that it just makes me zoom out a bit. And so we got up to the point where we could agree on Jesus. You know, I'm fine with saying he lived his life exactly how he did. He dies. We don't have his writings for 40 years. We'll give it 40 years.
Jesus never wrote anything.
I don't think there's enough evidence to then believe that Jesus did rise from the dead and he is the Son of God, because you're having to believe M, Q, and whoever else you said, you're having to believe maybe they're eyewitness accounts.
Okay, so do you believe Julius Caesar existed?
Yeah, I do.
Why? The writings of him came much later. I don't remember the exact dates, but it was much later.
Well, I'm not saying Jesus didn't exist. I'm saying I would never say Julius Caesar is God.
Can you find any document in antiquity that has earlier sources? Now, I'm sure there's a couple, but it's not a lot that has earlier sources than the Gospels are to Jesus.
I don't know.
Probably not. Maybe one or two, if I can think off the top of my head. I think there is one really close for Caesar. It was written by a contemporary, but Caesar was Caesar. That's a big thing. Jesus was just the guy on the street. That's another big thing to take into consideration. So when we're looking at antiquity, this is a very strong piece of evidence. And the only reason you're denying it, right, because you believe everything else it says, but when it says miracles, you're like, I don't believe in miracles. Let me ask you a question. Let's say we had a writing. Let's say the Gospels were written 1 year after Jesus. Would you then believe they were miracles?
If they were the exact same way?
Mm-hmm.
No, I wouldn't, because we could go into a debate about the Gospels and how they contradict. And
okay, so let's play that out.
We don't even know the source.
Let's play that out then. Let's say they are written 1 year after Jesus. None of them contradict in any way whatsoever, and we know the exact authors who they were. Do you now believe Jesus rose from the dead?
No.
Right. So again, you're arguing semantics for no reason, because again, it doesn't matter the historical evidence we bring to you, you'll never be
No,
convinced.
it's because it doesn't matter what the book would say. You are objectively believing that the book is the truth, and the book is the claim.
I've never made any claims of what I believe.
The book as the claim, and then also the proof.
So hold on. You're putting words.
So we could
hold
play
on,
around with
pause you.
The story is in the Bible.
I'm going to pause you because you're putting words in my mouth. The only claim I've made so far is that there is a good historic reportage model in the Gospels. That's the only claim I've made.
We're using the Bible, but we're talking about Jesus rising from the dead and becoming God. So this is the whole Christianity claim. We're talking about the validity of it. So it is very important. You're using the book, which is the claim, as the evidence. You can't. It doesn't work.
Yes, you can. Absolutely.
Because we're arguing semantics about.
You're arguing semantics.
What if it was 1 year later?
I'm not arguing semantics.
I don't care about the fine details. It's the more broader picture.
Then why are you bringing it up? If you don't care about the fine details, why did you bring up the fact that what you said was the Gospels was 100 years later? You're the one who brought it up. I
don't even honestly remember how we got into that, to be honest with you.
Because you said you can't trust it because it's written like 100 years later.
Oh, yeah, because it's the whole argument of Christianity. We're diving right to the meat and the bones. Is Jesus God?
Okay, and but here's what I'm saying, bro, is that you're arguing points that even if I was correct, wouldn't change your viewpoint. Like, let's say, again, I convince you that the gospel was written 1 year after Jesus, that they have really good contemporary sources. We know who the authors are. There's no contradictions. It still doesn't change your view. You're still going to say miracles don't happen. Jesus didn't rise from the dead.
Dude, I honestly don't know. It would change everything. It would change my entire life up to this point.
So you're backtracking.
Christianity was completely different in that way. I just can't give you an answer like that. What I would think if the world.
You're backtracking. Earlier you said it would not convince you. So now are you changing?
I mean, in sitting here as I am, if the Bible, I open it up and the story is that the Gospels were actually written a year after, no, it's not enough to make me believe, because there's way too much. So then else wrong with the Bible.
Right. So then my question, I said, listen, not a year later, there's no contradictions. We know who the authors are. We have original sources. We have all the things that you guys complain about. Does it convince you that Jesus Christ rose from the dead?
No.
Right. So why bring up those points?
Because then we go into the rest of the Bible and every single example of why I don't believe what the Bible is saying is true or coming from God. And then we're here for days. Again, this took me years of my life to break down.
You're really shifting what I'm trying to say here. We've gone, again, in this hypothetical, all those issues that you brought in the Bible, there's none there. It still doesn't convince you that Jesus Christ existed. So why are you bringing up those issues in the Bible? Because it has nothing to do with the Bible. It has nothing to do with whether or not it's historically reliable. Because even if we could fully convince you of it, you still say no.
Fully convince me of Jesus? No, you're just saying if the details were good enough to where the writing was credible enough that you couldn't refute that the authors are saying he rose from the dead and they saw it.
That's not what I'm saying.
Would you that's not what I'm saying. And I'm saying, no, I wouldn't believe these fuckers that he rose from the dead.
Right. So again, no matter what we say about the Bible, even if it's the most trustworthy historical document that's ever been written, and we could prove it without a doubt, you still would not believe. So why are you
the most trustworthy document?
Let me finish. If we could prove that and you still would not believe, then why do you bring up these issues of the Bible?
Well, you're telling me, okay, if it was the most trustworthy document, all the things I talked about that are wrong with it would not be wrong with it. They would be fixed.
That's what I'm saying.
So then we would have a book that is perfect, and it doesn't exist. We have a book that is clearly written by man and is not inspired by God. We do not have this hypothetical you're talking about.
Why are you afraid to answer the question?
Why I don't believe.
Why are you afraid to answer this question? It's a very simple question. You seem to be getting upset. It's a straightforward question. We hypothetically, do you know what a reductio is?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm giving you a reductio. We have this book. There's no contradictions. We know the contemporary sources. It's 1 year after Jesus died. Tells the same story, but has none of the historical problems that you hit. You say you still wouldn't believe that he rose from the dead. I say, okay, fine. If that's the case, why are you bringing up contentions with the historical reliability of the gospel? Because if it wasn't there in the first place, you still wouldn't believe. So why even talk about it?
I think because it's talking about Jesus. It's the books talking about Jesus rising from the dead and truly becoming God. It's the exceptional claim. So when there are historical flaws and contradictions in it that we have, I'm going to argue them because I think it is an argument against the validity of the entire religion. So it's not like if we could just fix up this one part, everything would be fixed for me. This is a big, crucial element of the argument.
But you already said, if we fixed all those issues, you still would not believe.
Yes, because it is just one piece of the puzzle.
What are the pieces?
It's not the only reason people are not Christians is because of inconsistencies in the gospel. There are dozens and dozens of other reasons.
So like I said at the very start of the conversation, the issue isn't in the evidence. The issue is in your own epistemology. It's your own dogma. Because it doesn't matter the evidence I bring. You will never be convinced.
Yeah, I don't think I am understanding.
I don't get how. I don't know how to explain it any clearer at this point.
It's just like the way my perception is.
If we solved all the issues that you have with the Bible, you still would not believe Jesus Christ rose from the dead. So the issue isn't in the evidence. The issue.
Hold on. This is where I'm getting confused because you narrow it down to we're just talking about the Gospels, but then you go back to saying if we fixed all the problems I have with the Bible, that's completely different than just this certain argument about the Gospels. If we fixed every problem I had,
the historic reportage model.
Okay.
If we fixed all the issues with it being historically having any historical issues, contradictions, early sources, authors, all those things, you still say you wouldn't believe. So again, why do you have contention with it? It doesn't matter because it doesn't matter if it's true or false.
Yeah, I think, okay, I understand. Yes, you could say I have dogma there, but I would say because of moral reasons, scientific reasons, philosophical reasons, other branches of reality is also why I do not believe in the Christian God. So that's why it also doesn't fix. That's why you see me as
Christian
dogmatic.
God, you just don't believe in God.
No. Well, yes, I don't. Because like I mentioned earlier, I don't think belief is not a choice. And so I haven't been convinced that there is a God, so I don't believe in one. But if there is one, I can't prove that there isn't. I wouldn't be shocked.
So you don't think that there isn't any aspect of your own biases and your own preconceived notions that's forcing you to just kind of live in this like certain ideal or the certain box?
No, I was raised Christian and I grew up Christian, went to a Christian school, and I deconstructed over a set of years, and I know what it's like to live in like both worldviews, I guess, because I was truly bought in, and I would say more over fear and ignorance before, because I was a kid. But yeah, I don't really know where I was going with it. I don't remember the question, to be honest.
My question is, because you're talking about, well, I'm just not convinced, right? Mm-hmm. Talking about like a certain level of responsibility. Of course, like I'm not convinced that there's mice under my house, but I also haven't gone and looked.
Yeah. Well, I've definitely looked. And it's like, there's no evidence that there is a God.
There's lots of evidence that there is a God.
There's certain arguments about how God has to come before the universe because there has to be...
There's philosophical deductive arguments, right? Then there's actual evidence.
No.
Yes. Okay. Does Jesus Christ exist?
Does he exist? Probably. He probably did.
What is the evidence that he existed?
Just the information and the historical evidence we have that he was a real person.
And does that historical evidence also say he resurrected from the dead?
No.
So then how do you know Jesus existed?
Because there's people not within his discipleship, writing about his existence, talking about him as a prophet, talking about him as just another man. There's other
right, and
perceptions
those
of
other
him.
writings talk about him being miracle workers.
Yeah,
Right? So like the Talmud says that he was a miracle worker, says he was a wizard and a warlock. I think even Tacitus, Josephus, one of them, talk about him being like a miracle worker to some extent as well. So they also agree that he performed these sights and wonders. So again, if there's evidence to say, because people claimed in history that Jesus Christ resurrected from the dead, or people claimed in history that Jesus Christ existed, preached, did all these things, then there's evidence to say that he resurrected from the dead. Now, having evidence doesn't mean it's conclusive.
You just trust.
You didn't hear what I said. Having evidence doesn't mean it's conclusive. If something in history says A and you believe it, and something else in history says B and you don't believe it, are they both still considered evidence?
I didn't follow.
If you read in history that Jesus,
I'm just uninterested in where this train of thought we've gone off.
Well, then why are you still here?
Well, we really derailed real quick, and it's like you're trying to explain something really in depth to me all of a sudden when we were talking, and we were just talking about.
You said there is no evidence for God, none. Yet you believe that Jesus Christ existed. What is the difference in evidence?
What? I don't see how you're tying this together.
How do you know Jesus Christ existed?
I do not know he existed. I mean, I've seen recent studies talking about it very well. He didn't exist at all.
So now you're changing your stance.
But because of the writings and just the overall consensus and
okay, so because people in history recorded it, you believe he existed. So is that evidence?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess so.
So if it's evidence when people in history write something about somebody else, then when they write something about a miracle, why is that not evidence?
I think the arguing of someone's existence is a whole lot different.
I'm not interested.
Arguing
I'm not interested in your epistemology
God or miracles.
I'm not interested in your epistemology.
I feel like you're trying to strong arm me.
I'm not interested in your epistemology or your dogma. I'm interested in what is the fundamental difference in A being evidence and B not being evidence.
Evidence is testable, and it can lead you to the truth.
Then all history is not evidence. Because you just said, now you're backpedaling again. Because hold on, you just said that most likely Jesus Christ existed because of what was written in history.
Scientific evidence is testable. Different evidences. There's historical evidence. There's scientific evidence.
Give me the
different kinds of evidence.
Give me the testable evidence that Jesus Christ existed.
No, you can't test. You can't test historical evidence.
Great, phenomenal. So you have historical evidence that he existed. Then why is it the historical evidence of miracles is not evidence?
Because I don't believe that the Gospels are true. I don't believe they're true.
Not the question I asked. Can you answer the question I asked you, please?
No, I'm just lost at this point, to be honest.
It's a very simple
I'm sitting on my
question.
porch. I'm freezing. I've been here for a while. I'll let someone else in here.
All right.